Good morning, and thanks for joining us here on the TMI Show with me,
Yep.
Ted Rall, filling in for Manila Chan, who's out this week. Be back on Monday. Is Robby West, our producer? You remember him, of course. Obviously, the main topic today is going to be the shooting of oh my God, it's like I'm totally like losing my mind here. Um, of who's the guy who got killed? Robby.
Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk,
Yeah,
right.
the
Oh my God.
assassination.
This is what happens when you get old. Okay, anyway. So yes, the search for Charlie Kirk's killer is still ongoing. The FBI is reporting that a gun that's suspected to have been used in the shooting has been recovered from the woods nearby. We're also going to be talking about some immigration stuff. The South Korean workers who got arrested in that big raid basically are being told, don't worry about it, you can come back to work. So there's apparently not all illegal immigrants are treated equally under the Trump administration. Meanwhile, just to highlight that, an Irish lady who's a grandmother, 58 years old, she has a green card, and she's been here since the 70s. She's getting thrown out of the country and deported over an ancient $25 bum check charge. And we're going to talk about political motivated killings in the United States, political violence in general, what causes it, and of course, if we can identify the causes, what can be done about them. Joining us is going to be CIA whistleblower and my co-host on Deprogram, which airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, John Kiriakou. I'm going to go ahead and bring us up to date on the latest about the Charlie Kirk killing, and we will bring in John at that point. So, Robby, if you are ready, let's go ahead and do this thing.
Yep, let's do it. Now, I would like to have good news to report one day. Just one day.
There's a word for good news. It's called boring.
Yeah, that's true. But how about we just have a boring week for once?
Well, I mean, that's called Switzerland. Anyway.
Yeah, but they have mountains and passes. That's why they're boring. Because it costs so much to go in there.
They do. All right, well, here's what's going on. Vice President J.D. Vance and Second Lady Usha Vance will visit Salt Lake City today to pay respects to the family of Charlie Kirk. They will no longer travel to New York City. Today is, of course, the anniversary of the 9/11 terror attack. They were supposed to come here for that. Instead, they're going to be going out to Utah. Investigators are seeking the person who fatally shot Charlie Kirk at a Utah college yesterday. And according to former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, they are in a race against time. The clock is not your friend. Every hour that goes by, the killer gets further away, has a better opportunity to seek shelter and support, and of course, to travel, said McCabe, CNN senior law enforcement analyst. The investigation has two main fronts, according to McCabe. The first is the crime scene at Utah Valley University, of course, where the killing took place. They think the shooter fired at the political activist from a rooftop. I think that this was a parking garage. They'll be hoping to find anything that could provide leads. Second is the area expanding outward from the shooter's perch, according to McCabe. Authorities will be combing through any video filmed in the area that may have captured the rooftop. Some have already surfaced online. Hallways, parking garages, in order to identify people. Each will need to be found and interviewed. The shooter is deemed dangerous. The danger presented by that subject is limitless, McCabe said. This is a person who engaged in an exceedingly violent act in front of thousands of people and was able to pull it off with a high degree of skill. The shot was about 200 meters away. One single shot, and the victim is dead pretty much instantaneously. This person knows that capture means certain prison for the rest of your life under the best circumstances. It could also mean the death penalty, McCabe said, because Utah is a death penalty state, as Gary Gilmore famously let us know. So facing those kind of stakes, this person wants to get away more than anything else in the world, and anyone who obstructs him in his escape is someone who's taken their life in their hands. In related news, a third of college students now say that using violence to stop someone from speaking on campus is acceptable, at least in some cases, according to the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, FIRE. Every year, we survey 70,000 college students, and we ask them their acceptance for using violence to stop a campus speech. Fire Executive Vice President Nico Perino told CNN. This year, we found that 34% of college students support, to some degree, using violence to shut down a campus speech. That's up from 24% in 2021. That is a significant increase in a very
That's
short.
insane.
That's showing a cancer in our body. Politics, she said, in our public debate. Again, free speech is what we do instead of violence. You were saying, Robby?
It's nuts. It's completely insane. Words are not violence. You don't get to beat someone up or shoot them or shut someone down because they say something that you do not agree with. It's ridiculous. What the hell is wrong with our country? What the hell is wrong with our society where you think that this is perfectly okay just because someone has an opinion that you don't like? Shut up, sit down, grow up.
Well, obviously, as someone who traffics in opinions for a living and has done that for most of my life, obviously I agree. Let's go ahead and bring in our guest. Joining us is John Kiriakou. He's my co-host on Deprogram with Ted Rall and John Kiriakou. We air Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And obviously, we talked about this last night on the program. The news broke just shortly before we went on the air yesterday. But now we've had a night to think about things and try to find out what's going on. We still don't have a suspect, so we don't know the motivations. I mean, we assume this is an act of political violence. I mean, 99% chance. I guess, it could, there can always be a personal angle in these things that we're not aware of. The person's still on the lam. Their gun is obviously a gun has been recovered. They're going to test it ballistically to see if it's the gun that fired the fatal shot. I assume they already know the answer to that question, right? It doesn't take that long, does it?
No, it doesn't. And there have been a couple of developments, Ted, just in the minute that I was waiting to come on the air. The FBI is now saying, beyond the fact that they found the gun, they believe it is the gun. They say that they are now looking for a college-aged shooter. You and I were speculating yesterday that this person had to have some sort of military training to use a high-powered rifle. The more I thought about it over the night, the more I thought, well, that's not necessarily true, because really anybody with any hunting experience could make a shot like that. Presumably you have a scope, it's a long gun, really not that big of a deal. Well, apparently the FBI believes that's the case as well. So they're looking for a college-age shooter. Wanted to make a couple of other points. Number one, I don't care how smart you are. If you're that age, you're going to make a mistake, and you're probably going to leave DNA all over that thing. In addition to your thumbprint on the bullet casing or the shell casing or whatever it is, you're going to leave a trace. Third, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I know what it was. Third is the point you made about time not being the friend of the investigators. That's absolutely true. Everybody, I'm sure, has heard of the show, The First 48. It's on A&E Network, and it follows homicide detectives as they investigate homicides. The premise being, if you're going to solve the case, you're probably going to solve it in the first 48 hours. Once 48 hours pass, people have a chance to get away. It rains, outside, then ruining the crime scene. It just makes it harder and harder and harder. For each day that goes by, you're less and less likely to solve.
Witnesses are drifting away.
Exactly. And one other thing, Donald Trump just announced a moment ago that he will posthumously grant the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Charlie Kirk.
This is getting it's getting silly. The president already announced that the flags are going to be flown at half-mast. There was this incident, this blow-up on the floor of Congress, where there was a call by Republicans to have a moment of silence and prayer. And apparently some Democrats shouted it down and were upset about it. Not a good look for Democrats, but kind of not a good look for Republicans either. I mean, everyone's showboating here.
Everyone is. And these numbers that Robby talked about a minute ago are chilling to me. It's funny. And Ted, I don't mean to sound like a crotchety old man. I've never considered myself to be a crotchety old man until maybe today. I watch these TikTok videos every night. I'm laying in bed, doom scrolling, and I love videos of what are called First Amendment auditors, where people just go outside of a police station and just stand there with a camera, and the cops invariably freak out. I love them. I watch them I watched them again this morning. So a lot of videos that are interspersed in my feed are of young people walking up to these cameramen and going like, uncomfortable. It's like, well, you know what? Tough shit for you if you're uncomfortable having your picture taken in public. Well, it's these same people, it's this same generation now saying, you know what? If I don't like your speech, which I unilaterally declare hate speech, it's okay to shoot you and to kill you. And I, for one, and I know you guys are going to agree with me, I'm not willing to let my country go down that road.
No,
absolutely not.
Well, I guess this is a good time to get into some historical context. So I decided, I was kind of like curious. Robby posted something just privately, sort of, that I guess he found on social media, where people were saying, Democrats love crime. Is that a quote? And I was kind of
Trump from the White House.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, I'm like, okay, listen. My memory is that that Americans love, one of the things that really brings us together is that we love to kill each other for our political opinions. And it's a bipartisan effort. So, and I wanted to sort of see if that's true. So I asked AI to cough up a list of some prominent political killings in the last 20 years, right? I'm not going to, I'll probably list them all. Okay, so here we go. 2001, February 18th, Dale Bagley was the mayor of East Haven, Connecticut. He was a liberal. He was murdered by his conservative political opponent. The October 15th, 2002, James Sackett was a campaign aide to a gubernatorial candidate. The perpetrator was tied to anti-government militias, basically targeted Sackett to disrupt a Democratic campaign in Maryland. There's the August 15th, 2008, Bill Gwatney. He was the chairman of the Arkansas Democratic Party. I don't remember this at all.
No way.
But a right-winger, Timothy Dale Johnson, who was against Democratic policies on gun control and immigration, although probably not helping his case on gun control, shot Gwatney to death to protest perceived threats to the Second Amendment. There was this incident that I'm sure you guys will remember that I had forgotten. July 7th, 2008, at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, a security officer named Stephen Johns was shot to death by a white supremacist named Johns Brunn. He attacked the museum because he was an anti-Semite. There was a Pentagon shooting on March 10th, 2010. Sort of an anti-government conspiracist named John Patrick Bedell attacked the Pentagon and killed a security officer. Of course, there was this Tucson shooting where Gabby Giffords and several other people were shot. She didn't die. The killer was neither liberal nor conservative, was sort of just a weird, a wackadoodle, a nut, like carrot top type person. There was the Wisconsin Sikh temple shooting in 2012. Wade Michael Page, a right winger, a white supremacist, hated Sikhs because he thought they were the same as Muslims, and was basically, so this was a racist attack. There's, of course, the 2015 Charleston, South Carolina church massacre by Dylan Roof, who was a white supremacist. So far in this early stage, most of them are right wingers, but don't worry, liberals will be included. Then there's the Orlando shooting. Christina Grimmie was a singer who was shot at a political fundraiser, and basically by a radical Islamist, Omar Mateen, pissed off about U.S. foreign policy. There's the baseball the congressional baseball game. It was a Bernie Sanders lefty who named James Hodgkinson, who was out to shoot Republicans. So that's an example from that side. There's the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting, the Tree of Life shooting. Robert Bowers was an anti-Semite, right-winger. There's 2019 El Paso. Jordan Anchondo was an local political activist, a liberal, and an anti-immigration right-winger named Patrick Crusius shot him at this event, and because he was against democratic open border policies. Of course, there was the January 6th Capitol riot. That's a right-wing, mob, basically. There was the attack on the judge in New Jersey. I think we talked about that yesterday. Judge Esther Salas. Her son was killed. Daniel Anderl. Apparently the judge wasn't home. Roy Den Hollander was a men's rights activist. He went out. She was a right winger. He went after her because she was a feminist. Mm-hmm. Remember Paul Pelosi?
Sure.
He was attacked by a right winger. Of course, Luigi Mangione. I think it's reasonable to say that he was a liberal, opposed to United Healthcare. There was the Israeli embassy staff. This was a liberal pro-Palestinian person who killed that couple coming out of the Israeli embassy on May 29th earlier this year. And of course, also earlier this year in June, the two Minnesota, the husband and wife, two Democratic politicians killed by a conservative, and now most recently Charlie Kirk. I'm sure a bunch of them hit the AI cutting room floor. The reason I go through this long-winded exercise, though, is just to remind us that this keeps happening, and it's really, I think, inaccurate to say that this is I guess if you have to look at that list, maybe slightly more conservatives do this than liberals, but that's sort of beside the point. The point is that it's bipartisan. Political violence,
it is,
goes from left to right, and it goes from right to left. And for Republicans to act differently right now, it's sophistry. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. Thank you for putting that together. That's a terrific op-ed.
Thanks.
But this just shows you. This shows you how the country is backsliding in the area of political rhetoric. In 1968, in April of 1968, Martin Luther King was killed. Just 2 months later, Robert F. Kennedy was killed. A couple of years after that, or 4 years after that, George Wallace was shot and paralyzed. Mm-hmm. Just 2 years after that, within a 3-week period, 2 different women tried to murder President Ford. It's like we've backslid back into that awful period from 68 to 75, where it just seems like the norm to go out with a gun and shoot people whose political opinions you disagree with. And I have to tell you, and I'm sure you're getting calls like this too, I had cousins call me from Greece yesterday saying, you need to back off on Palestinian human rights. You don't want to be a target. And I'm like, no, that's exactly what they want us to do. They want us to go silent. That's the whole point of this.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it is terrifying. John, I mean, I'm sure you're the same way. I have rarely ever stepped out on a stage without thinking that there might be someone who hates me with a gun in the audience.
It's always in the back of my mind.
And, I mean,
there's that famous story. I'm sorry to interrupt you. The famous story about Teddy Roosevelt. On the campaign trail, goes up on stage to give a speech, and a guy shoots him in the chest, no less. And he insisted on finishing the speech before he allowed his aides to take him to the hospital to have surgery to remove the bullet from his chest.
My favorite part of that story is that he was saved by his long-windedness. because of the fact that back then, because he kept it, like they all kept their speeches folded in their
breast pocket.
In their breast pocket. They would pull out a page, read it, and throw it to the ground. He was at the beginning of the speech. If the killer had waited later, but the bullet was slowed down significantly by the thickness of the speech. And so, he definitely was wounded, but he lived to tell the tale. That was during his Bull Moose campaign run in 1912.
That's right.
And then remember, he got up again and he said, "Takes more than that to bring down a bull moose," and the crowd goes wild,
crazy. Yeah, wow, respect.
Total respect.
Wow.
Well, so I mean, I also kind of like did some research about like what political scientists say are the common societal explanations for political violence in any kind of Western society. And so here's the list. I wanted to take, bounce this off both you guys. So they're saying ideological polarization. So deep divisions in beliefs amplified by partisan media and rhetoric, dehumanizing opponents, fostering hostility. I mean, I would say that's part of it. Economic inequality and marginalization. Social exclusion breeds resentment, pushing individuals towards extremism. If you're more likely to become a political shooter if you're poor or unemployed. Erosion of institutional trust. I think, to me, this is the one that resonates with me. Distrust in government, media, or the judiciary fuels the perception that you can't get justice through the system, so you have to take matters into your own hands. Propaganda and misinformation, don't need any explanation there. Access to weapons. Obviously, if there's no weapons, you can't really shoot anyone. And psychological and cultural issues like alienation, mental instability, just crazy people. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, go ahead, John.
That sounds right on. And, listening to that list too makes it easy to point the finger at so many different places. Fox News
list.
and MSNBC and CNN are equally guilty. Last night, kind of late last night, MSNBC fired Matthew Dowd. Matthew Dowd deserved to be fired yesterday.
What exactly did he say? Because I didn't pay attention.
Well, he's the idiot that first posited that the shooter was a supporter of Charlie Kirk's who was firing into the air in a celebratory fashion because he was so happy to see Charlie Kirk.
What does he think? Does he think we're in Afghanistan? They do that there.
Yeah, and in Iraq.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he said it with a completely straight face. But the reason he was fired is that 2 hours later, while still being interviewed on the show, he was one of their paid political commentators. He blamed Charlie Kirk for the shooting, saying that, when you spew hateful rhetoric, then you shouldn't be surprised when somebody turns up to shoot you. So victim blaming, and then advocating curtailing his First Amendment rights to freedom of speech. So it was Charlie Kirk's fault that some guy from the roof of a neighboring building shot him in the throat. And even for MSNBC, that was too far. So they issued an apology, they issued a retraction, and they fired Matthew Dowd.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, I'm not sure that I agree with this firing. I mean, he said something. I mean, Charlie Kirk has said stupid things.
Yeah,
I've
sure.
said stupid things.
Me too.
And like the point is, Matthew Dowd said some stupid things. I'm not sure the answer is to be certainly the answer isn't to shoot anyone. I'm not sure the answer is to fire anyone either. I mean, the answer is to have robust dialogue. And that's the issue here. I mean, I don't think Matthew Dowd learns anything from this except, man, I just have to be. I stepped in it that one time.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a quote of Charlie Kirk going around the internet yesterday among a lot of my left-wing friends who basically where Charlie Kirk is saying empathy is bad. No one should believe in empathy. Empathy is a fake word invented by the left and it's done a lot of damage.
Yeah, and empathy is so un-Christian.
And the implication,
right?
I think actually it's the very essence of Christianity.
Exactly.
But okay, read your Bible. But I guess, but to me, okay, so that's a dumb thing. You could definitely, if you looked through the hundreds of thousands of hours of stuff that's been recorded of any of us here, you're going to be able to dig up some nasty shit that would, if something happened to us, people would say like, oh yeah, Ted Rall was a bad person. Look at what he said.
Right.
But I mean, because when you bloviate for a living, you're going to say a lot of things.
How many times have you and I stepped in it?
Yeah.
And then I pray that it's a one-day kerfuffle and it just blows over. But if you're Charlie Kirk and you're famous and everything you say is on the internet and has a second and third and fourth life on YouTube, invariably you're going to say something that you wish you hadn't said.
Well,
It still doesn't mean you should be shot in the
big question
neck.
for you guys. Okay, so yesterday in Gaza, probably 100 people died yesterday. We're not talking about them. We're talking about this, and I know this is that old quote, right? Like one death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic. It's always attributed to different people. Stalin often, but he probably didn't say it. Why are we talking? I mean, is this as important as we think it is? I mean, Presidential Medal of Freedom, flags at half mast, 24-hour coverage on all the networks. I mean, us talking about it on all of our shows. Why is this more important than the people who died in Gaza yesterday?
For a couple of reasons. And just real quick, Starline, he asked me a question. I was going to answer it real quick. He asked, was it a ricochet from ballistic vest, and that's what caused him to get hit in the throat? I don't think so. You know, I don't work for the FBI. I'm just some hick out in Montana who likes guns. I shoot guns a lot. And when I was listening to the video, you can hear the report of the rifle. If I hazard a guess, I think that he's either shot with a 308, or if I had to pick, I would say probably a 30-06. And the reason why I say that, but if you have that kind of a round, and John, you probably would agree with me on this, a bulletproof vest is not going to stop.
No way.
It's not going to stop that kind of rifle round.
No, it'll give you a nasty bruise from a 9mm, but a round for a long gun like that, not a chance.
That
go
goes
right
right
through.
And I mean, as someone who's done an awful lot of hunting with iron sights, if I hazard to guess, probably this dude used a scope.
For sure, 200 meters.
If you're a marksman, though, no, what you would do is that you'd use iron sights, because you just you tripod it. I'm not going to go into the woods on this, but if you aim for the head, especially with the 30-06, you count for driftage, you go down, you hit the neck. That's how you take out a deer. That's what you do, is that way you don't spoil the meat. I'm just telling you from experience, as someone who's done this a lot. That's, if I had to guess, I think that's what's going on here. As far as the overheated political rhetoric, yesterday on Deprogram, that there was some YouTuber who's just there in the comment who said, "Be careful, Robby, because you're next, because you're a right winger, you're a Christian, you enable this, you deserve to get shot. If not shot, you deserve to be hung." And I'm looking at this.
We'll have to block that person.
Yeah.
I don't care. It's just I was thinking about this. Too. It's just like, yeah, I'm a right winger. Yeah, I'm a Christian. But if you think I support what Israel is doing, you're out of your mind. Here's what happened yesterday with Charlie Kirk. Whoever this killer was, and to answer your question, Ted, is this more important than what happened in Gaza? I would say the answer is yes, because before yesterday, the right was broken. It was fractured. Trump's base was at war with itself, and the Democrats are sitting back eating popcorn. That's no longer the case.
Oh, the Democrats are popcorn watch worthy themselves these days. Are you kidding? Both parties are dealing with a major schism, and that schism's only, I mean, look, it's the anniversary of 9/11. We were all unified. I had an American flag on the back of my car. We were all like, non-sectarian. Where did that all go a few months later after the Patriot Act passed, and it basically became the Reichstag fire moment for the Bush administration. It all went away. And I don't know. Any unity that you're seeing on the right now, Robby, I suspect is going to be short-lived.
It's hard to say, because yesterday, it was kind of silly. What happened with Congress yesterday, about the moment of silence. Then you have Jasmine Crockett coming out with her ghetto skank ass self, shrieking like a banshee, just making a complete and utter fool of yourself. I mean, if someone shows you who and what they are, it's probably a good idea to believe them.
Believe them.
And that's the issue here, because here's what I think is going to happen. People on the right are pissed. People on the right for the last 8 years have been being called Nazis, being shadow banned, being debanked, just really, I mean, they've been they've been the victims of a political witch hunt in a lot of ways. Now, you can disagree with that, but I think that the facts on this back me up. And here's the issue. With the left, whenever you say, you see a Nazi, you punch them. Well, great. If I'm a Nazi, and as a right winger, I'm a pretty level kill one. Not everyone is going to be as level killed as I am. And what's going to happen is if you start treating people like an enemy as opposed to someone
Well,
uses
there's that
you disagree
dehumanizing
with.
language that we're talking about, Robby. I mean,
Of course.
sort of like, in the days after 9/11, I stopped counting all the death threats I got from people who said I was anti-American. Well, if
Oh
you're
my
American
God.
and you
insane.
love America, and you think some cartoonist is anti-American, it stands to reason it might be your patriotic duty to waste him.
Well,
So
because Christianity has two major I guess you can call them philosophies when it comes to dealing with an enemy. One is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. The other one's turn the other cheek. And we hear an awful lot from the left. The problem is that leftists don't read their Bibles. When Jesus is talking about if your brother slaps you on the cheek, you turn the other cheek off from the other. That's what you do with someone who's a brother that you disagree with. An eye for an eye, though, Jesus never said that. That's what you deal with an enemy. When you start, if someone attacks you and they start killing people, and right now a lot of people on the right are saying that all the bullets are coming from one direction. Maybe it's time
but
to
they're
fix
wrong.
That.
They're
Of course
wrong
they're
about that.
Of course they are.
I can send them my death threats that I still get.
I get
if they
it.
don't believe me.
Hey, no, listen.
And there
I
will
get it.
definitely be left-wing victims and liberal victims of political violence in America in the near future. Yeah. There just will be. I mean, this is,
and that's
it would
what
be
I'm worried
great
about.
to be, honestly, it would be awesome if we could say, this is caused by a certain type of person with a certain type of ideology, and the victims are always the same. Then we could really isolate the cause, and we could cast the blame, and we could stop those people and control them. But that's just not true. I mean,
No.
The truth is, it's all Americans who do this. They tend to be younger. Young people are just more violent. They tend to be male. They tend to be white, but not exclusively. And, John mentioned Squeaky Fromm, who tried to kill Jerry Ford.
And Sarah Jane Moore.
Yeah.
But the problem is, debate, though.
Poor Jerry Ford. What did Jerry Ford do?
I know, right?
He was a nothing burger. He pardoned
Nothing.
Nixon. That was the worst thing he ever did.
Mhm.
Although now I've come to see the wisdom of it. I didn't see
indeed.
the wisdom of it at the time. I thought it was a bad move, and it made the presidency unaccountable. Now I think it was a really wise and mature
Very
decision.
forward thinking. Totally agree.
What I worry about is that Trump is going to pick this, and his faction, they're going to run with it. They're going to milk it for as much as they possibly can. Like
Yep.
you have,
which
you
is
have
only going to make
lunatics.
things worse.
Of course it is. Like you have lunatics like Laura Loomer,
Yeah.
who's talking about going after the Democratic Party institutionally and then banning it. It's just like, sorry, I have
She's
no
an idiot.
interest in living in Nazi Germany. That's not me. And then on the other side of the aisle, you have Pocahontas, Senator Warren say, "Oh, well, we need to ban guns." Well, best of luck with that too. I mean, no one's willing to sit down and actually address the issue. The three of us here on this panel, we disagree with each other on a lot of things, but we can sit down and have a reasoned conversation.
Well, we're not the problem, and I guess the point is, how do we set an example?
Both of y'all have been to college. I never have. So I'm gonna ask y'all a question. What's the purpose of college? I thought the entire idea of college was to sit down, have debates, and learn.
Open forum for ideas.
And
You're exactly right.
And now it's not. Now it's an
going
echo
back
chamber.
to John's people. The ancient Greeks invented this whole thing.
Yeah.
Well,
Aristotle and Plato.
Well, the thing that you read off earlier, talk about how people in college think that is okay to use violence to shut someone up. That's the antithesis of college, as far as I'm concerned. That's not what you do.
Well, I mean, the problem is we're not getting good leadership from the leadership class right now, from the media or from the president or from the politicians, because I mean, nobody's acting well here, right? I mean, what you want is a Hollywood moment where everyone just stops and just say, cut this shit. We're all Americans. Let's stop doing this to each other. I mean, what matters here really from this story is that, kids have lost their father, and a wife has lost her husband, and that, by the way, hundreds of people, those college kids who were attending this event, have been traumatized,
oh my
terrorized,
God, yes,
victimized. I mean, what they had to see and suffer through is, I know the psychologists of the future need to earn a living, and they will in Utah. But this is like that's what really matters here. And this isn't really about politics. It's about murder. And, it's unjustifiable murder.
Well,
and that's really kind of what I wish we would focus on. I wish the president would focus on that. And I don't even know if talking about guns at this time is useful, because, guns aren't going away. That's part of our culture. Mm-hmm. But it's like, but like basically just saying, like, we have to be cool with people talking shit in the public space. We just do.
Well, now the issue is that the right now has a martyr.
Yeah, they sure do.
They have a martyr, and that's what it is. And there's so much rage.
And the left are rolling their eyes with some justification.
Well, they're rolling their eyes
because he's not really a great martyr.
I have a friend, a very, very close, dear friend, who's the former head of the Republican Party in Texas. And he texted me. We were texting back and forth last night, and he said to me, the left underestimates how popular he was among young people, 17 to 25. He said, mark my words, Charlie Kirk is the Martin Luther King for that conservative generation.
Wow.
He said, we may not see it as older men.
No.
But young conservatives hold him in that kind of esteem.
Yeah. Like, when my kids came home from school yesterday, when Thomas got home, he walked in, he had tears in his eyes because he watched Charlie Kirk religiously for a couple of years. And he said, Dad, they killed him, and whoever did it needs to be hung. Whoever supports him needs to be hung. You met Thomas. He's a pretty even-keeled kind of kid.
Yeah, he is.
And, I mean, to John's point, it's not the boomers that you have to worry about here.
No.
It's the young people who saw this, and love him or hate him, what he would do is that he would go and he would talk to young people at college campuses, using his voice to make an argument. You can disagree with the argument that you want.
And by the way, it takes, I really like the format that he had, right? Prove me wrong. Like going in and saying, like, I'm going to engage with people on the left who disagree with me, and we're going to have it out, right? I mean, I love that. I love going in and mixing it up with right wingers. I have a great time. I'd go back on Fox in a second, although, they're scoundrels the way they treat you when you're on the air, but that's a whole different story. But yeah, I mean, and I think in a way, like there he was, kind of like not really Daniel in the lion's den, right? But because it's Utah, but still, I mean, he's exposing himself, and it's really low to take someone out who's willing to do that. Not to mention it's cheap, because it means that you can't win your argument with using your words. You're not confident enough in your argument. You think the person's opposing argument is so powerful that they can only be beaten by being silenced, by being murdered.
Well, the whole reason the whole reason we remember the name Socrates now is because the Athenian ruling class, they couldn't beat him in debate, so they had him killed.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a thing, and it's what I'm really concerned about. And
now, we don't know, by the way, we don't know the motivations of the killer. Just want to be clear here.
Yeah. Well, most likely the dude wasn't out hunting pigeons with a 30-06. So
no. I mean, I'm sure we're talking about it. I'm sure we're talking about a liberal Democrat right here, no question. But we'll see. John, thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you. Thanks
John
for having me.
Kiriakou, CIA whistleblower, American hero. We will be back on the air this afternoon at 5 p.m. Eastern time for a deprogram with Ted Rall and John Kiriakou. Thanks, John. Have a good day.
Thank you, guys.
All right, let's move on. We have some immigration stuff. I know you have no opinions about the immigration debate whatsoever. So, if you can try not to fall asleep during this discussion, I would really appreciate it.
I'll try.
All right. Trump offered South Korean workers at the center of an immigration raid the chance to stay. That, according to South Korea's president, as almost all the South Koreans prepared to leave the U.S. President Lee Jae-myung also said that the workers' return to South Korea was delayed over a dispute over whether they should have to wear handcuffs, in which Seoul's demand that they be unshackled had won. The U.S. wanted to handcuff our workers on their way to the airport, but we insisted that it shouldn't be that way, Lee told a press conference, saying that the flight was delayed after Trump's order that those who don't want to go back to South Korea don't have to. Those were the workers, of course, from the Hyundai LG battery plant in Georgia, who had been scheduled to leave yesterday on a plane chartered by South Korea. Now they're due to leave today. The decision not to handcuff them reflected the deep bond forged between Trump and Lee in Washington last month, that according to South Korean officials. The officials also said that Trump told American officials to encourage the workers who were arrested to keep working here in the U.S. and to help train Americans. Of the workers due to be transported back to South Korea, 330, among them 316 Koreans, 10 Chinese, 3 Japanese, 1 Indonesian, chose to board the flight. 1 South Korean decided to stay back in the U.S. The workers were arrested during a raid last week, of course, on that battery plant, which is a joint venture between Hyundai and LG, both of which are South Korean companies. ICE released a video of the workers in yellow vests shackled at their ankles, wrist, and waist. Secretary of State Rubio and his South Korean counterpart, Cho Hyun, met yesterday. After the talks, Cho said Seoul had secured assurances that they will face no problems entering the U.S. in the future to work. Robby, I'm sure you're very happy about this.
Oh, I'm so very, very relieved to hear that more illegal immigrants are going to be able to continue working here in the United States, driving down wages and taking jobs that Americans simply can't do, like building stuff. So, I mean, I am relieved that this has happened, and the fact that Trump is being somewhat hypocritical on this, it breaks my brain because he's not a hypocrite at all. I don't understand it.
Never. Yeah. Well, I mean, this is, it's low even by Donald Trump standards. I mean, the only reason that this happened, obviously, is because, this plant in Georgia is high tech. It's stuff that, that Trump values. And obviously, I would imagine behind the scenes, Governor Kemp of Georgia contacted the White House and said, hey, is there any way we can leave these South Koreans here? This is a multi-billion-dollar facility. We want to get the taxes for our state coffers. So, not all illegal immigrants are created equal. If you work in tech, no problem. You can stay here and we'll treat you with respect. And I guess ICE was foolish enough to think an illegal immigrant is an illegal immigrant is an illegal immigrant. But no, not really. You're only really an illegal immigrant if you're a day laborer in front of Home Depot.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if I had it my way, I'd just dragnet every last man, woman, and child of them and just ship them back to the shithole from which they were spawned. But I don't get to have my way on this, obviously.
Robby, if you have, I do think, would you differentiate between people who, for example, have a green card versus those who don't have a green card? Would you differentiate between people who are law-abiding versus would you prioritize? There's over 10 million undocumented workers in the United States, right? So if you're going to get rid of them, you can't you can't just snap your fingers and get rid of them all. Wouldn't you start with the scoundrels and worry about the non-scoundrels later, maybe?
If President West, if I got elected president before I got assassinated within the first year of my term, what I would do is I would start with the prisons first, because why would I pay to house and
agreed
have no?
And we already know the criminals.
Why would I pay you here? Yeah, of course. So I would deport them first, 100%, and then I would just go from there. As far as someone having a green card, if you have a green card, you're here legally already. I'm not worried about you. I don't think you should be here, but you're not here illegally. No, Congress has given you permission to be here. We have immigration laws. You follow the law. You're here. Welcome. It is what it is. But to answer your question, I would go through the prisons first, and then I would go through every meat packaging plant in the country. I'd round them all up, and I would tell these companies, look at you, Tice's Chicken. If you want to stay in business, you have to start paying Americans a living wage. That's what I would do. And then I'd move to Home Depot, and I would go to all these other places. Yes. And I would wipe them. I would clean house. But I would start with the prisons.
All right. I think you and I are kind of on the same page here. Okay. So speaking of which, an Irish grandmother who has lived in the United States for most of her life and holds a green card, is about to be deported because she wrote a bad check for $25 10 years ago. Donna Hughes Brown, 58 years old. How does she get to be a grandmother? I'm 62, and I'm a long way from being a grandfather. Anyway,
Earlier.
She was detained in July after landing in Chicago on a flight from Dublin. She's being held in isolation in a detention center in Kentucky. She's lived in the United States since 1977, has 5 children and grandchildren, and ran a horse farm in Troy, Missouri. Her husband, Jim Brown, not the blaxploitation actor and former NFL star, a U.S. citizen and military veteran, told reporters his wife isn't a criminal, that he 100% regrets voting for Trump. He said she had been detained on a misdemeanor relating to a $25 check she signed 1 decade ago, and for which she made restitution, which you have to pay $27, and received probation. She was detained under legislation amended on the 4th of July as part of Trump's sweeping One Big Beautiful Bill Act. The couple went to Ireland that month for a funeral. When they got back to the United States, they landed at O'Hare in Chicago on July 29th, and a cop was waiting for her on the ramp. 5 days later, she was transferred to an ICE facility in Kentucky, where she told her husband conditions were deplorable. He lost contact with her entirely when they moved her to isolation. Brown thinks that her requests for a low-sodium diet might be the reason they moved her. They tried to feed her hot dogs and chili mac. She probably told them after the 5th time they tried to serve her, "I'm not eating that," so they locked her up. I haven't heard from her in 3 days now. Brown said that a deportation is scheduled for September 17th. Hopefully they'll dismiss it. We have 40 character witnesses we sent to the lawyer. Hughes Brown was born in England, grew up in Ireland before moving as an 11-year-old to the U.S., where she renewed her green card, but never became a citizen. Thoughts?
Double jeopardy is wrong. I mean, she wrote a hot check. She paid her debt to society. She paid her $27 fee. I mean, I don't understand why they're going after this woman. I don't get it. I do not understand it. And I am far from being a libtard when it comes to immigration.
No, you're really not.
I don't understand this. I don't get it. I don't understand the thought process behind it.
It's cruel.
It's stupid. It's cruel and stupid. I mean, if you want people to actually get behind you when it comes to, deporting illegal aliens, that's what I want to have happen. You probably don't go after people and commit double jeopardy in the process over something that has been resolved over a decade ago. We have bigger problems than this.
Agreed. No, I mean, I can't even add to that. I mean, at this point, I'm just going to add a news you can use component to it, Robby, which is as follows. I mean, honestly, if you don't have full-fledged U.S. citizenship and you have a green card, you're a permanent resident of the United States, I don't think it's a good idea to travel overseas or leave the country at all. You're in peril, when you re-enter the country. I think it's not a good idea. You should probably try to get naturalized, or maybe wait till Trump leaves, stay in the country, then try to become a naturalized U.S. citizen. You probably should have done this years ago, honestly. I never really understood all the people I know who, I'm fine, I don't need to become a citizen. I'm like, but you live here. You have a green card. This is where you don't intend to go back home. So get the citizenship. I mean, if I moved to Kazakhstan and I didn't intend to ever live anywhere else, I'd become a Kazakh citizen as soon as they would let me. So that's rule number one.
Yep.
I think, just basically do not fucking take any chances like that. Avoid all contact with the authorities. I mean, don't drive. I mean, if someone else can drive you, don't be the person behind the wheel. The cops are really not allowed to ask many questions of the passenger of a car. So, I mean, lay low, become a U.S. citizen. Don't travel overseas.
Yep, we got a question on Rumble, Ted, from Elias 3SP. Can you address the incendiary rhetoric from the right against Democrats in the last day? Right equals Trump, Woods, and many others.
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, look, the thing is that I kind of alluded to this a little bit when we were talking to John about this. Yeah, no, I mean, there is a lot of overheated rhetoric coming the other way now, and stuff like Trump saying, Democrats hate the law or whatever. I mean, this isn't helping. Okay, this is doing is encouraging retribution. Retribution's not what you need. It's like what you need is for someone to stop the cycle. Imagine if after 9/11, the United States had decided not to treat it as a military act, but to treat the attacks as a police matter, investigate and capture anyone responsible, including in places like Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, arrest those people, send them to the World Court in The Hague. Imagine if after October 7th, the Israelis had decided not to treat it as a military thing, but to basically play the victim card and say, woe is us. Why did they attack our beautiful young people and rape and kill them? We're going to try to, address the root causes of the Palestinian anger at us. Why do they hate us so much? Why do they hate us? And try to answer those questions. I mean, you could maybe start to break the cycle. This is not that. This is, unfortunately, I hate to say this, the Israeli leadership, were jumping up and down, kicking and screaming with joy when October 7th happened, because it gave them the excuse that they needed and wanted to invade and annex and ethnically cleanse Gaza. Similarly, yesterday, when Charlie Kirk was killed, some figures on the far right were like, this is awesome. We are going to be able to use this to beat up the liberals. And we're seeing that already. So look, if it's disgusting for a liberal to say that we shouldn't have a moment of prayer for a guy who's been brutally murdered, which it is, it's also disgusting to say that this is an opportunity to, sort of encourage retribution and similar acts going the other way around, as if they hadn't happened before, which we enumerated they have.
Well, I think it's bigger than that. Trump's biggest problem before yesterday was a split in his base, the Epstein files, foreign policy, Israel, all this stuff. That's all gone now.
For now.
Now what it is, well, I'm talking about specifically among younger people. What, like, for example, when we get done with the show, jump over onto Reddit and just go to some of the different feeds. Talk about Charlie Kirk. There is celebration, and I'm using that word deliberately. There is celebration. People just just overjoyed that Charlie Kirk was killed. That's from the left side of the aisle. Over on my side, people are fighting mad, and like, maybe it's time to teach these sons of bitches a lesson. That is what I'm worried about, because there's no more discourse. This is factional politics at its absolute worst, and Trump is going to play this because it solves his Jeffrey Epstein problem. It solves the split problem. Now what the question is going to be...
It's so cynical, Robby. It's cynical.
I mean, this is late-stage Roman Republic stuff. No, when the Gakis brothers were killed, the Senate, they couldn't... Basically, they came to the premise. It's not about to bore everybody to death, but it is what it is. It has to do with this. They came to the preeminence after the Third Punic War, when a lot of the citizens of Carthage were brought in as slaves, and those slaves were then used to do the work on the farms, and it bankrupted the farmers. That's what led to the collapse of the entire Roman civic system. The Gracchus brothers brought this up. The Senate could not. The senators at the time, they could not fight them on the premise of their ideas, because they were right. So what did they do? They tried to say that, well, they want to be kings, and they whipped up the mob, and they were beaten to death in the streets and thrown into the Tiber. That's where we are right now. The Republican establishment and the Democratic establishment, they cannot address the issue of housing costs. They can't deal with the problem of a declining standard of living. They can't deal with the whole idea of Americans actually asking questions like, why, if I get sick, do I go bankrupt while we send $10 billion a year to Israel? So now the Charlie Kirk gets killed, and now they're able to do these dog whistles, and they're able to change the conversation. That's what this is. And the way they're going to do this is that they're going to play the right and the left against each other, just like the British did in India. And that is what I'm most worried about. And I can see it happening. And frankly, it scares the hell out of me as someone on the right. Ted, you're not my enemy.
No, I'm not.
I mean, you're my friend. And people who disagree with me, Caleb Mopp and other people, we disagree, but that doesn't mean that I'm your enemy. And on the vice versa, I'm pro-life. I'm pro-gun. I want a well-armed population because I don't want the government to have a monopoly on force. But now you have Pocahontas out there saying, "Oh, we need to start taking guns." This, mark my words, if people let this happen, there's going to be revenge attacks, and it's just going to feed this cycle, and this whole thing is going to explode. If you want to have a dictator,
extremism is a response to extremism is never wise. Robby, thank you so much for guest hosting for Manila. You will be doing the same thing tomorrow. Yep. We are here 10 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. This is the TMI Show, Ted Manila Information Show, or Too Much Information for short. Please like, follow, and share the show as much as you can. Really need you to. Do we have an ad?
Yeah, we do have St. Pocahontas is also not helping. Elias, I'm going to call her Pocahontas because that's what she said. She lied about what she is. You know what? Sucks to be her. I'm not going to apologize for calling that old hag Pocahontas. So yes, I do have an ad. Let me go ahead and pop that up for us.
She's a cute hag, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, her and Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine Crockett should be expelled from Congress for that crap she did yesterday. Let me just go and pull this up. She's such a douchebag. Just 1 second. Let me see how. There we go.
Okay.
If you haven't already, make sure you download the Rumble app. It's free, simple to use, and the best way to stay connected to the content you want. Once you've got it, search for my channel and hit follow. That way you'll get a notification every time we go live. No missed shows, no extra steps. You can grab it right now using the link in the description or the pinned live chat. Download it to your phone and you're ready to go. And if you prefer watching on the big screen, Rumble is available on all major streaming devices and smart TVs. Just search Rumble, follow the channel, and be part of the action. There we go.
Robby, that was beautiful. Gorgeous. Couldn't do better myself, even though I'm a libtard. I'm not even a libtard. I'm a leftard. Anyway, thanks, everyone, for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Deprogram. Scott and I just dropped a DMZ yesterday. So if you missed that, don't miss it. Go back. If you already watched it, see it again. Who knows?
For sure.
All right. Bye.